This is episode number 253 with British artist and plein air mountaineer James Hart Dyke, who is going to share a story about a plein air adventure all of us wish we could have been a part of.
This is the Plein Air Podcast with Eric Rhodes, publisher and founder of Plein Air Magazine. In the Plein Air Podcast, we cover the world of outdoor painting. Called plein air, the French coined the term, which means open air or outdoors. The French pronounce it plein air. Others say plein air. No matter how you say it, there is a huge movement of artists around the world who are going outdoors to paint. And this show is about that movement. Now, here's your host, author, publisher, and painter, Eric Rhodes.
I hope you are having a terrific, well, I guess it's fall now, isn't it? It's the beginning of fall. I hope you had a terrific summer or winter for those of you who are on the other side of the hemisphere. It's kind of comical. I live on a lake in the Adirondack Mountains in the summertime, and people come up here only for the months of August and part of July sometimes. And we had rain every day all summer with the exception of about 3 beautiful days. And then the rest was all rain, cold. We had some hail, we had some storms, we had record rainfall. And then Labor Day hits and everybody goes home. And Labor Day was the next nice day. And ever since then, it's just been absolutely beautiful weather. So I'm staying. I'm going to stay as long as I can stick it out, probably at least another month. I have this little wooden electric boat, and I tool around in that electric boat. It's nice because it's low. I can control it. There's no steering wheel. It's just got a tiller. And I have that way I can set my easel up right in front of me. And I sometimes throw out anchor, but I usually don't. I just drift and I put my my painting up and I do it. So I had a chance finally, all the times I tried to paint this summer, which was not many because of the weather, I had waves. You know, the kids were out with ski boats. And so I was, tossing around with waves and it was pretty crazy, but there was zero boat traffic on Labor Day. And I pulled up in front of the Vanderbilt Pagoda, which was built by Mr. Vanderbilt years, back in 1908 or something. And it's a beautiful Japanese pagoda. His whole camp is Japanese. And I did that to practice for this trip that I'm going to be taking soon. I'll tell you about it. I'll tell you about it soon. But I posted video on my Instagram. If you're curious, just find me at Eric Rhodes. My goal with this podcast is to help inspire you to paint outdoors, because I really believe painting outdoors makes us better painters. We see light and color differently. And of course, the plein air lifestyle is so cool. I love it because I get to meet and paint with lots of friends. As a matter of fact, this week, Collie Wisson from Australia is going to be visiting here in the Adirondacks. We're going to go hang out and paint for a few days. And it's fun to just paint with others. It's a chance to be outdoors in nature. I've never been like a sportsman, but I love to express my creativity and love to express nature. And this is a chance to get into the mind of artists, this podcast, and to learn about their struggle, their journey, their techniques. And anyway, I'm so grateful to you. This show would not be the success. We literally have had millions of people listen. It wouldn't be a success, and we wouldn't be getting all these people listening if it weren't for your positive reviews and you sharing it and leaving comments. So thank you for making that happen. Today's going to be a red letter day because we have a really great guest, and this is a story you don't want to miss. And at the end of the podcast, we're going to do the Art Marketing Minute to help you sell more paintings. Now, a lot of you don't do that. That's okay too. But for those of you who do, we talk about the pros and cons of various things. And today we're going to talk about some new things that we haven't touched on before in the Art Marketing Podcast. Now, I have to admit that I was a bit of a fair weather painter, and I got a little rusty this summer because I just wasn't painting enough. but I did get to practice a little, and I'm practicing as much as I can the next few weeks before Fall Color Week. Fall Color Week is my annual fall retreat. This is our last year in the Adirondacks. It starts on the 29th, goes for a week. It's sold out with about 100 people, actually more than 100 people. And there is a wait list. It is sold out, so you're not likely to get in. But if you do decide you want to go, get on the wait list, because at the last minute somebody gets sick or has a death in the family, heaven forbid, or something like that, then we can possibly get you in. Always join those wait lists. Right after Fall Color Week, I'm going to drive back to Texas. I'm driving because we have dogs and we can't fly with them. Then I'm heading out to Sweden and Spain. I have my annual fine art trip with my magazine, Fine Art Connoisseur, and we take collectors behind the scenes at the museums. We go to see artwork. We oftentimes go to collectors' homes, artist homes, studios. We've got some really cool things planned, and there are seats available for that. Not many, but maybe 3 or 4. And you might want to check that out at finearttrip.com. Also, there's a wait list for my March Plein Air Japan trip, which I think is sold out, but I do think there's rumor that there are going to be a couple seats available. So let's find out about that. If you want to go, just go and join that wait list at pleinairjapan.com. FeedSpot, thank you very much, made us the #1 art podcast in the world 2 years in a row. I don't know how things like this happen, just little old me. But I think it's pretty cool. I have to admit, I don't want my ego to get out of control or anything else, because it's still, just tiny little thing, but that's nice to get acknowledgement. Thank you for making that happen. Coming up in November, we have Realism Live, which is our online art conference about realism, anything about painting anything real, right? Portraits, figures, landscapes, still life. We even have an essentials day for beginners and a refresher. Anyway, we've got some incredible masters, including, and this is great, the great Burton Silverman. And Burton Silverman hasn't done many things like this. And, Bert's in his mid-90s or early 90s. So this is a rare opportunity to see him. Go to realismlive.com. Coming up after this interview with James, like I said, I'll be answering art marketing questions. You can send in your questions to me, eric@artmarketing.com. Or if you want, you can come live on the recording of the podcast. Not many people want to do that, but I understand that. Okay, now I want to introduce our guest. This is really a red letter day as far as I'm concerned. It's a fascinating story because our guest, James, is what we would call an extreme painter. In July of 2022, he climbed Mont Blanc, which is the highest summit of Western Europe, and it's at the border between France and Italy. Now, Mont Blanc has an elevation of 15,800 feet. I've been to Mont Blanc. I haven't been on top of Mont Blanc, but I've been on top of the Jungfrau in the summer, and it's really cold up there. So I would imagine there was snow and cold. We'll find out about that. Anyway, he was accompanied by a collection of guides, cameramen, climbers, as he ascended to the treacherous north face to paint from the summit at sunset, which was his goal. He wanted to reenact and emulate as closely as possible the conditions under which the legendary French painter of the Alps, Gabriel Loppé, made his pair of summit paintings at sunset in August 1873. And I like these plein air traditions like this. Thanks to a weather window and a great painting, James was able to spend nearly 2 hours on the summit, not an easy task, and paint 2 pictures on the site, and also captured a number of studies that he took back to the UK and worked on from his studio. I'm anxious to hear all about this. He's not just a mountaineer, he's an adventurer, and he has undertaken a series of projects, including an artist in residence for the British Secret Intelligence Service. So does that mean he's a spy? We'll find out. He was an artist embedded with the British forces, working with the producers of the James Bond films, working for Aston Martin, and accompanying His Royal Highness King of England, Charles, on royal tours. Charles, as you know, is a painter. We'll probably talk about that. James, welcome. Man, there is a lot to talk about. You're a pretty accomplished guy.
It's amazing.
Yeah, so I'm curious about how this whole journey began. When did you get an interest in painting?
So I actually very clearly, when I was at the age of 8, my parents took me to the Victorian Albert Museum in London.
Yeah.
And there I saw a little study by John Constable.
Oh, there's a whole wall. There's a whole wall of Constable studies.
Yes, yes. Well, I saw a little study actually of his house in East Burgold. And that triggered something in me. And from that day onwards, I've been painting, actually. I've tried to give it up a few times and do other things, one might call more sensible things, but actually I can't. It's ingrained in me. And so it's a very clear beginning.
So did you pursue a career as an artist as a young man, or did you pursue other careers?
Well, I've always painted, but I did actually, when I came to university and studying, I tried to study architecture. So I did study architecture for 6 years. And I went to a place called the Royal College of Art. And there you have all sorts of people doing all sorts of artistic endeavors. So there I saw the painters doing their painting, and I thought, it just made me think, I want to go back to my painting. Although I love my architecture, and strangely, at the end of your architectural training, you have something called a degree show, and you put up all your architectural work. And the idea is that architects should come along and give you a job to be an architect. Well, I got architects coming along to see my work, and I got lots of work to paint buildings or make paintings of country houses. So in a way, that started my professional artistic career. And I started by painting architectural views for architects, and also going around country houses around the UK, making paintings of country houses, rather like Brideshead Revisited. It was a bit dreamy, but that's how my painting career started, really.
It sounds a bit dreamy.
Yes.
Well, plein air painting in the UK is a bit of a challenge because of all the rain. So how do you deal with that?
You just have to put up with it, and it's one of the many factors. Also, I have problems with dogs and horses and hornets and bees, all the usual things one has to put up with as a plein air painter.
Those are the joys of plein air painting, right?
I know. It's a really tricky game. I have to say, plein air painting is not for the faint-hearted. It's really tricky. So it's great you have this show. It's wonderful.
That's what I love about it. I love the challenges, and some people say, well, I don't want to go paint in snow, or I don't want to paint when there are mosquitoes, and I have memories of great experiences from the toughest conditions.
Yes.
I can remember I took a group, Fall Color Week. We went to Banff and Lake Louise, and they had a unexpected record snowfall while we were there, and I thought, I'm not a snow painter. I don't want to go out in the snow. And I did, and my friends did. And we all, we felt like we challenged ourselves and we conquered it. And I have great memories from those kinds of things. I think plein air painting is fabulous.
Yeah.
So
all those difficulties are really generators for painters. They're not kind of negative things. They make the kind of painting you do. The fact you're cold means you can't stay there that long, which means you have to paint quicker, which makes a certain kind of painting.
Well, you're painting with instinct at that point. You don't have time to think.
No, it's a very positive thing. And I call those horrible things generators. And they're not bad things, they're good things. Generators, yes.
I think that's a wonderful term.
Yeah.
So before we get into this, I would be curious about this part of your bio that we talked about, the British Intelligence Service and so on. Let's start there.
Okay.
What happened? How did this all come about?
Well, a kind of long story, but actually it came out of landscape painting. When I began to extend my landscape painting into places like the Himalayas, I actually went into places which were at the time war zones. And that linked me, the British military became interested in me then, and they started commissioning me to make paintings of military subjects and going out to war zones. And then somewhere along the line, I must have met someone in that intelligence world, which I didn't know at the time. And I did get a call one day, a random call, to go and meet someone in a restaurant. So I went into this kind of dingy restaurant, we had a chat, and the person said at the end, we'd like you to come and do a project for MI6 or SIS, as they like to be called, the British Secret Intelligence Service. And actually, I thought he was a bit bonkers, actually. I thought this was some kind of joke. However, they organized a meeting, and I went into the head office, And there I met some of the senior people, and I realized this was a real thing. And the objective was, it was the centenary of the British Secret Intelligence Service, and they wanted to celebrate it in some way. And they obviously can't bring cameras into the environment, but they thought they could bring an artist to make some kind of interpretation of what they do and give a feel for people in the public to sense what their life was like. And the idea was I was going to work in secret for a year, which I did, so I had to sign a lot of documents. And at the end of that year, there would be a public exhibition. So we'd go public with it and have a public exhibition. And that's the basic kind of principle of the whole project. And
were you there in the building along the river by the bridge? It's a beautiful old classic Art Deco building.
Yes, I was there in that building. It's quite, yes, I was. That's when I realized it was serious. They let me in, I went through all their security, and I realized, okay, this guy wasn't just bluffing me, it was a real thing. So and I was, it was pretty thrilling.
So did you find yourself exposed to overhearing conversations you should have not heard?
Well, as you can imagine, the whole thing was very carefully controlled. So I never, ever heard anything secret or sensitive. I was just given a general run around the place as far as they could, and I was able to talk to people just to get a feel of what life was like working in the British Secret Intelligence Service. And actually, just by working for a year undercover, so I couldn't tell any of my friends what I was doing, like any normal spy.
That's got to be kind of hard to do.
It was really tricky. So I'd go from the MI6 office back to my studio, which was in London at the time, and I couldn't tell people what I'd been doing, or my friends, or my family, or anyone. And actually, it's quite a good thing because you suddenly understand what life is like, what their life is like, and you can respond to that as an artist. So it's a good process to go through.
I don't know if I could do that. My son recently went to work on an internship at Weta Workshop in New Zealand, and he came home and he said, "I can't tell you anything. I had to sign a non-disclosure. I can't tell you about the movies we worked on and the sets we worked on. They all have code names anyway, but I still can't tell you. I can't tell you the actors that were there." And I thought, I don't know if I could do that. That's pretty remarkable.
It's another way of life. Yeah.
So you also painted in combat zones. I know that historically the military in a lot of countries has had combat artists.
Yes.
Some of the great illustrators of the 30s and 40s were combat artists. Were you actually painting in combat situations and documenting that?
Well, they took me to war zones, and I couldn't go to the front lines though. They said it was just too dangerous. So I was really painting in the main, like Camp Bastion, in the main kind of army bases really. But I got to fly with them and to talk to all the soldiers and get a sense what life was like. And in a way, actually, those in the bases, you see soldiers relaxing and being calm. You can talk to them, and you get a really good kind of quiet sense of what's going on, really, rather than the war-y stuff, which is very obvious in a way. Right. It's the quiet psychological stuff that's going on, and that's I was kind of trying to concentrate on that stuff, really.
Yeah, I would imagine. So was there a takeaway from that experience, or a takeaway from the Secret Service experience that you could share in terms of what you learned about their lives?
Well, in that world, the people are selfless, I have to say. In civilian life, I find people much more selfish, but in those worlds, they're selfless. It's about what you can give to other people and what you can do for your country. And it's a very beautiful set of people to work for. It was very inspiring, and I really enjoyed it. And I really miss not being with them. Actually, they were really special people.
Oh, how nice! Now you also had the benefit of working, you said, on a James Bond film. Tell me about that.
Well, because of my work with MI6, and MI6 obviously never really talk about what they do, and particularly don't have any images about what they do. The producers of the James Bond films were quite interested to meet me. So I went to meet Barbara Broccoli and Michael G. Wilson, and we had a bit of a discussion. And I think they were just interested to see what what I have to offer in terms of images. They look through my images, see what they liked. But at the end of the day, I did a portrait for them, and they used one of my paintings in their film Skyfall. So that was really
nice.
That was really exciting. So great to be part of that world.
Well, you get it's being seen by millions of people, your work. That's wonderful.
Yeah, it's very thrilling. But I have to say, it all comes out of plein air landscape painting.
Yes.
You know,
Well,
really
and of course, the one I'm very curious about is your relationship with now King Charles.
Mhm.
Did you ever have the opportunity to paint with him?
Yes, I mean, it's an old tradition. The royal family, each member of the royal family used to always take an artist with them on their journeys abroad. And His Royal Highness the Prince of Wales, or now King Charles, he always took an artist with him when he went abroad on his foreign trips. And I was lucky enough to go on 4 of those trips with him. And you're effectively his guest. You kind of run along behind him in the royal party, and you can paint and draw whatever you wish. And at some point during the trip, you'll have a dinner with him, and he'll discuss how you're getting on, and we just talk about painting. Really a very generous gesture. And I know many artists he's helped and has taken with him. So it's a very beautiful thing.
Well, he's been very good for the arts
Yes.
throughout the world, not just the UK.
Yeah.
And he is also a very wonderful artist himself. I mentioned to you off camera that I took a group of art collectors to the UK, and we went to a gallery, trying to remember the name of it now, but they carried Charles's work, and they had an exhibit that we got to see, which was fabulous. And there are a lot of people who are in prominent positions who paint. I've had the pleasure of meeting and painting with many of them. Some of them don't paint well. He does.
He's very good. He's very underrated, and he's extremely good.
Yes, and he's got a couple of books out, I think, of his paintings.
Yes, he has prints. He's extreme. He's extremely also painting under tremendous pressure, really, because there are always people around wandering about. It's not much fun. Even I find it annoying in the street when people come along and pest you. And I have a little trick that I always put old artists of mine told me, is to put a hat down beside you. You might get a few quid or bucks, or they might not linger too long. So I don't know. I find that keeps people away a bit longer. I don't.
One of the tricks that I've seen is that people will put earpods in their ears,
okay,
and they, even if they're not listening to anything, just so they don't have to answer questions.
Yes, well,
I would assume the questions you get are the same questions we get.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm sure.
Are you painting?
Sure. Yes. What are you painting?
What are you painting? My aunt was a painter.
Yes. Yes. You get a long discussion. So it is. I think it's the same wherever you're in the world. Although strangely, actually, in the Himalayas, the people there have no idea you're painting something in front of them. Their concept of painting is about symbolic painting.
Really?
So when they come watch you, they come and stand in front of you, and they have no idea you're painting something in front of you, which is quite interesting.
Really?
It's another way of thinking, really.
Yes, it certainly is.
Yeah. Anyhow. Yeah.
Well, I applaud you for what you've done. Did Prince Charles give you any pointers or tips, or did you give him any?
He's very complimentary, and it's difficult to be too pointed about his painting, but he's very good. He's extremely good, and I wish you'd do more. He probably has very little time for it now, sadly. So
yes. Well, I mentioned to you again off camera that Joan Rivers was a real close friend of his, and was an acquaintance of mine. I wouldn't say a close friend, and she called me. And we were on the phone one day, and she said, I really love all this plein air stuff that you're doing. I said, oh, I had no idea you knew. And she said, not only do I know I'm a plein air painter, and I've been painting with Charles, and I bought Charles Plein Air magazine subscription for Christmas, and I've renewed it several years now. So I need to find out if he has renewed since her passing. Mm-hmm. He probably doesn't have time to read it. But I put a request in I said I'd drop at the drop of a hat. I'd fly over and take him painting with me. Oh. So far I've only received one rejection letter.
Yeah, very polite, as I said. Very polite rejection letter.
Very polite. Yes,
They're very good at it.
Yes, they're very good. Well, let's talk about this great adventure because I think that's fascinating. First off, kind of let's get the behind the scenes story. How did it all begin? Where did this idea come from? Talk to me about the inspiration of this.
Okay. Well, my dealer, who's dealt with my paintings for a good 20 years now, he's actually a specialist in alpine paintings, and he's a climber himself. And in particular, he specialized in this artist called Gabriel Loppé, who lived in Chamonix, which is the town right below Mont Blanc. And he was painting in the 19th century. And there was a big fashion at that time for painting alpine scenes. It was the Alpines, or the mountains actually, just being discovered at that time. In kind of older times, people would never go to mountains, but during the kind of Industrial Revolution, people started going out to the mountains, and people wanted paintings of mountains. And so there was a big market for mountain painting. And Gabriel Loppé was one of those painters. And not only was he a painter, but he was an extremely good climber. And actually, in fact, many of the first climbers were actually artists. So I always find that very interesting. The Matterhorn, which is the big spiky mountain in the Alps, was first climbed by an artist in 1865. And actually on the way down, he lost 4 of his men. They fell off and caused a bit of a storm throughout Europe. But anyhow, Loppé, he decided in 1873 to climb Mont Blanc and to paint from the summit with his friend Sir Leslie Stevens. And yes, he did 2 paintings from the summit. And you have to remember that time, going to the summit of Mont Blanc was like going to the moon.
Yeah.
And going there at sunset, which he did. No one had done that before.
Well, and because you can't stay up there overnight, I assume, and then you have to climb down in the dark.
Yeah, that's right. And the temperatures drop very quickly when the sun goes down. And so no one actually knew at the time what would happen. Could you get down in the nighttime, down a very treacherous route in the dark? And also the temperatures will be dropping very fast. So it's extraordinary and audacious that Gabriel Loppé went up there and did these 2 paintings and came back down again. So that's the kind of beginning of the story. And now my dealer, William Mitchell, who's the specialist in alpine paintings, he has a brother called James. And I think they were one day having a random conversation. And James' brother suddenly said, well, why don't you go to the top of Mont Blanc and paint from the summit, get an artist to paint from the summit? And that triggered the idea for William. And then he spent 3 years planning this trip. And a lot of time and effort, finding the funding as well, and putting a team together to go to the top. And he very kindly asked me to be the artist to go to the top. And I should say I'm not an experienced climber, and I also get bad altitude sickness, which I found out in the Himalayas. So in a way, I was not the first option he might have had to go to the top of Mont Blanc. And Mont Blanc is 4,800 meters, and you can start getting quite sick for altitude sickness at about 3,000 meters. So when I said yes, I thought there's probably 50-50 chance that I'll get to the top of Mont Blanc and be able to paint.
And so what did you have to do in preparation to get yourself in shape?
Well, we did do a training climb the year before. So the whole team came together. We met in Chamonix, and we tried a test climb on another mountain, which is actually quite severe, actually. And also I could test out my painting kit, which is what I really need to do. And I found a lot of flaws in what I was using. And so I spent actually the next year designing a painting set, which I know would work on the top of Mont Blanc.
What kind of challenges did you find that you needed to redesign your painting set? I assume high wind.
Wind is a problem for kind of everyone. Yes, wind's a problem, but also, at the time, my first trip, I tried to use acrylics, which if they freeze, you lose them. They won't kind of unfreeze.
Right. So
I realized I have to use oil paint. And the problem with oil paint is you have to take turpentine or some kind of spirit with you, which increases the weight. But I had to take oil paint.
And how many colors did you take with you? Just the primaries to keep weight down?
I took about 7 or 8 colors. I've got 7 or 8 colors I normally use in smallish tubes. But the whole thing was designed so it could really be worked as efficiently as possible. No messing around looking for tubes of paint. So each tube of paint, I colored the whole thing the color it was, so I could find it really easily. So lots of tiny details to save any amount of time. And also the fact I could fold the board or painting panel into the into the painting box, which is kind of standard thing, but I had to make sure it's going to work absolutely properly and efficiently. Also, I wanted to stand up to paint. I didn't want to sit down.
Right.
Because I wanted to make a certain kind of painting, a kind of a freer, more liberal kind of painting. So I took a reasonable amount of paint and a reasonable amount of turpentine and big brushes and a board which was about 30 by 40 centimeters, not huge. And I had a team of 10 people to spread the things out between. So but it was about a year testing and trying out different ways of painting, and I actually made the painting box myself, so it fitted exactly what I needed it to do. There's a long. It was about a year. Really, was a year working on that.
What time of year? What time of year was this trip?
So we went up in the early summer, so July.
All right. So what was the temperature at the top?
Well, it's actually very warm, and sadly, as many parts of the world are experiencing, we have with climate change and global warming, and the whole of the Alps is melting. And the route we took, which is called the ancient route, which is the route Gabriel Loppé took, is now considered very dangerous, and most people do not do it. So we had to find a special guide. There was a man called Christophe Profit, who's quite a famous climber in France, and he's the only one who knows the route, or the ancient route, which involves going up glaciers, winding your way around crevasses, and trying to wiggle your way around very dangerous points where there could be avalanches or rockfalls.
Did you ever get up to a certain point and say, what am I doing? Why? I need to turn around. I need to get out of here.
You know, I was so fearful of not getting to the top. I was going to the top somehow. And also the climbers around me said, you are going to the top. Even if you collapse, we're carrying you up there, because there's been so much effort put into this project that I felt a huge responsibility to perform, to get up to the top, also to make the paintings. It put a lot of pressure on me when I was making the paintings on the top, actually. It was really a very stressful ordeal, but also a very thrilling one too.
And did you get sick? You got altitude sickness?
Well, amazing. I was absolutely fine, no problem at all. I did go couple of weeks before to the Alps to kind of acclimatize, so that may have helped somewhat.
And what time of the day did you start out your journey and to get there and be set up by sunset?
Well, it's basically a 2-day journey to get from Chamonix to the summit, and we didn't take any cable cars. We took the exact route Loppé did, walking the whole way, and we actually walked from his studio, or his house actually, which still exists, with all his old ice axes and his paintings still sitting there. And he died in 1913, I think. It hasn't been touched since. So it's an extraordinary kind of museum. We walked from there, and you walk to a halfway point called the Grand Mulets. And that's about a day's walk up to that. And then we had to wait 2 days for the weather. And then it's another full day, starting 8 o'clock in the morning, to climb up to the summit to get there. I think we got there about 8 o'clock in the evening. And we had 2 hours on the summit. And then it's another, you walk through the night to get back down to the hut. So it's a good 24 hours walking, really.
And how much painting time did you have?
Well, I had 2 hours on the top. I can't remember. The thing was so highly charged at the top. I mean, it was a very moving experience, actually. And quite a lot of burly climbers were in tears, including this guy called Christophe Profit, who's climbed Everest and all the big summits of the world. But he was so excited that we were going up not to bag the mountain, but to be reverent to the mountain and to venerate the landscape and to show its beauty, which, he doesn't often come across that. He was actually very, very moved and touched by that, which is it was very thrilling, that.
So you said you did 2 paintings plus studies at the top.
Yeah. Well, I did 2 paintings at the top, and that's all I did was 2 paintings at the top, really.
Okay, well, that's a lot of paintings to do in 2 hours. It
was. Well, I only had really half an hour on each, because a lot of fiddling around with clothes. I mean, the moment we reached the summit, I was pinned to the ground by the other climbers, and they started dressing me in very warm clothing so I wouldn't get cold. But I felt like a boxer being prepared for a match. It was quite extraordinary. Also, extraordinary thing I should have said, actually, that I don't know if you saw one of Gabriel Loppé's paintings. He painted this kind of triangular purple shadow, which comes from the mountain and stretches across the landscape.
Yeah.
and up onto the horizon. And I thought that painting, he must have made it up, or it was not correct or unreal.
We can show that for the people who are
Yes.
watching on YouTube.
Yeah. And yeah, in fact, that's it. There's a little on the left-hand side of that strange shadow. But in fact, the first thing I noticed when I arrived at the summit was this extraordinary purple shadow going right across the landscape and moving quite fast. So I had to set up very quickly, and I made one painting of that shadow. As it
So
kind
was your goal to create the same painting that he created, or to do something completely different?
I think I think I probably did without knowing. Yes, I think, but I thought the painting was fake. Actually, I thought not fake in the sense of fake painting, but I thought the shadow was something he'd made up. But when I realised it's a real thing, and it's really there, I decided that's what I've got to paint. That's the first painting. So the first painting is the shadow, and then I turned around and painted the sunset, just as he had done, almost 150 years ago. That's the same kind of view.
Huh.
So it's kind of, yes.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
And then you mentioned you did some studies. You didn't do them at the top, but you must have done them in camp or along the way.
Yes, all the way up. When I had time, generally in the evenings or first thing in the morning, I made little studies on the way, wherever I could, really. There wasn't that much time, actually, between moving around and climbing. There's not a huge amount of time, but there are some little studies I've done.
Oh,
some of these are mixtures between done in the studio and done up there. But
so it looks like you had prepared paintings with an underpainting of orange or something.
Yes, I took the underpainting color for me is very important, and I decided the two colors I wanted on my trip to Mont Blanc was a gray and an orange.
Yeah.
And the gray is quite useful because it tones in with rock and kind of glacial effects. And then the orange, so this one now is actually done on site. You can see it's painted on a gray. So you get a very soft kind of colors in it. Helped me work much quicker by working on a gray. It's very efficient.
Yeah. And
the orange was for the evenings when you get this extraordinary orange light that makes all the rock glow. And I thought by using the orange, I could effectively save time painting in orange rocks, effectively. I can just leave the surface as it is and just paint around it. So it's another way of being efficient in terms of painting.
Fabulous. And I understand you took a film crew with you, or was there a documentary created?
Well, we had a photographer with us, and we had a kind of a writer with us. And we also had a great grandson of Gabriel Loppé. We had my dealer, and we had a couple of clients who climb and also collect mountain paintings. And then we had some kind of professional guides who have used before. So it's a kind of nice mix of people. We'd all climbed together before.
What kind of physical shape did you have to be in to do that? It looked like you were climbing a pretty incredible incline. I climbed a mountain this past weekend. It took me 2 hours just to get to the top of this small mountain. I can't imagine what you went through.
Well, I did. I trained, physically very hard. We have some hills where I live, and I was running up and down the hills. But also, as I said, I was not an experienced climber. And all the guides said about the climbing technique, it's no problem, don't worry about the ropes, and we'll manage you. But I was determined to learn a bit about ropes and climbing. And so I went to my local camping shop, bought some ropes and some climbing kit, and went to the nearest woods, where I learnt techniques in climbing to the dismay of some dog walkers, because I came tumbling out of trees on the end of ropes when they weren't expecting me. So that was my mountain climbing, was in the local woods. But actually, it served its purpose, because I did learn a few basic things which were useful when we were climbing. Otherwise, the guides really they can take you up without much experience.
So
yes,
what a fascinating experience. What did you learn from this experience? What was your final takeaway of having gone through this? I
realized that quite often I'm not painting properly. On the top of Mont Blanc, I've never ever concentrated so hard in my life. I had all these people wandering around me. I had my dealer spent 3 years organizing this. We'd had press, all sorts of things been happening. I spent a whole year preparing for it. So the pressure on me to perform on those two little paintings was enormous. And I have to say, I've never, ever concentrated so hard in my life. It was a very beautiful experience. And I realized that when I'm plein air painting, I must, wherever I am, I've got to try and concentrate in that way and not just render and color in, should we say, but really think hard about painting. I think you can tell when a painting's been really considered and when someone has just kind of filled it up with not much feeling in it. There's two very distinctive ways of painting. That's what I'd take away from it.
And what did you learn about yourself?
Oh, I suppose I learned I could perform under those conditions, actually, because it was quite difficult. I mean, that was definitely, of all the things I've done, that was extremely challenging. But in fact, all the things like MI6 and working for the Royal Tours, in fact, the work of the Royal Tours, you have to work in difficult conditions because you're surrounded by people. Quite often you're sandwiched between some prime minister and some president. You don't know who they are. And you're sitting there drawing, which is quite intimidating to try and do that. So in a way, all those previous things I'd done had prepared me for this climb up Mont Blanc, which I have to say is really a dream moment for me in my life. It's like one of those moments when everything in your life comes together at that point. It was a very, very special moment. I'll never do something like that again, I don't think.
Well, I try to picture myself or any of the people in our audience who are listening to this, when somebody comes to you and says, "Hey, would you be willing to climb Mont Blanc and do a painting at the top? And it's going to take you 3 days, and you're going to be really cold. It's going to be very miserable, and you're going to have to spend a year getting in shape to do 2 paintings." And I think a lot of us would have just got, I don't know. So just the fact that you said yes says an awful lot about your adventure nature.
Well, I couldn't say. I was strange because when I was at art school, I spent the week at art school, and the weekends I was at an RAF base learning how to skydive. So I had this very strange duality in the art world. And actually, when I came to painting mountains, I found that actually, as I said before, many of the first climbers were painters, and there's a great duality between the physical and the aesthetic. And there's a whole thing about the sublime and the romantic movement, which I've discovered, and I feel very happy in myself now. It all kind of fits together, everything I've done.
Now, talk to me about plein air painting in the UK. You have there's a couple of people who are getting a lot of notoriety over there, namely Pete the Street and
yes.
Haiti Joe, David Curtis, some others. But talking to you off camera, you're not seeing a huge plein air movement over there that you're experiencing. Is that correct?
Well, I think it depends who you know. I do know Pete the Street, wonderful. He's fantastic, a great name as well. I mean, but I know a lot of people who went to the main art schools, the kind of highbrow art schools, and they rather sneer at it in a way, which I think is a very great shame, really.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know. I'm not sure. I think it's being reborn now, I hope. I think it's regrowing. The fact people are going out into the landscape, enjoying the landscape, it's good on so many levels, not just painting, but on just for mental health, relaxing.
Well, perhaps they sneer at it because in the UK, as you know, back in probably the Victorian era, there were what they called Sunday painters when everybody was a watercolorist, and they'd sit in the parks and they'd do watercolor, and they were hobbyists. And perhaps there was this perceived connotation that it was not professional or something. But, the movement that we've seen in America in the last 20 plus years, I mean, it really has blossomed. I mean, we anticipate that there are hundreds of thousands of people plein air painting. We've done some questioning from the easel manufacturers and so on to find out about how many they're selling. This is a massive movement. We are seeing, there's a massive plein air event in Wexford, Ireland now, and there's also a giant plein air movement happening in Spain. I'm going over, I'll experience a little of that soon. And so to me, it feels like, people are picking up on it, and we just need more people like you to get visible and to help encourage others and let them know that there's nothing wrong with this. As a matter of fact, I think all of us who listen to this podcast believe that plein air painting makes you a better painter because you're not staring at photographs that have lied to you about color and light and shadow and so on. And you're not able to capture that vibrancy without.
I shouldn't overstate the fact. I kind of live in my own kind of world, really. I don't know that many other painters, so
Yeah.
it's difficult.
You're a
to
studio
judge.
hermit.
Well, I kind of studio in the landscape somewhere, or just busy doing my own stuff. It's a bad thing. I should get out and see more things and be with more artists, really.
Talk to me about Constable. You were inspired initially as a child by those Constable paintings.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the best plein air paintings I've seen in my life is that wall. I think it's in the Victoria and Albert, if I remember correctly. There's a wall of paintings that Constable did. One in particular, I can't get out of my head. It's a tree trunk. And it is as good a painting as I've ever seen anybody ever do. Have you ever studied Constable or tried to follow his path, or go paint in some of the locations that he's painted?
Definitely. I read all about him all the time. I feel I almost know him in a way. In fact, where I live in Brighton, which is just south of London, he used to live in Brighton, and so I actually walk the walks he used to walk.
Wonderful.
And I can spot some of the views he painted, and I go to where he used to live, and I pay homage to him. He's my real hero, and I almost feel I could understand him. Although sadly, I think he wouldn't like what I do, because he liked the everyday. He wouldn't like me going up the top of a mountain and painting the top of a mountain. He was very much more about the everyday. But maybe he'd forgive me.
I think he probably would. I think, all of us look at you and what you've done as pretty remarkable. And there aren't many of us who would have done something like that. So I applaud you for your effort. So you've done something that has been pretty beyond remarkable, a lifetime achievement. What's next?
Oh, well, I'm coming to the States. I'm going to come to Yosemite Park.
Are you now?
And where else? I think it was the first national park in the world, wasn't it? And I think it was set up by, is it John Muir, he promoted it, I think. He was a Scottish kind of writer about landscapes. And I think
when
Hudson,
are you coming?
I think soon, November.
November?
Yes, I think so. So
probably,
that's our next trip.
Oh, wonderful. Well, I'll give you all the tips about painting in Yosemite. I've painted there many times. It's wonderful. You'll
the bears.
Absolutely love it. And there are some places that are equally as stunning as Yosemite, very close by as well. So you're going to enjoy that. And if you want to be connected with painters who will meet you there, we'll do that for you too.
Thank you very much. I'd love to. That'd be great. Fantastic. Very exciting.
Well, this has been absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing and for inspiring us. And let me tell you, James, that you have a standing invitation to speak at the Plein Air Convention, to teach, to paint, and to tell your story. I think people would love to see the slides and the story and maybe the video. And if you decide you want to do that, let us know and we'll put you on the agenda.
Cool. It could be great. It could be fantastic.
And I'm looking forward to meeting you at next trip into UK or your next trip here.
Oh, tell when you're coming. It'd be great. I'd love to meet you.
All right, that would be terrific. Well, thank you so much, and thanks for being on the Plein Air Podcast.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me. Thanks.
All right, we're going to keep the recording going. And James, we're just going to say a quick goodbye because we've got to do a little bit more of the recording. But thank you so much. Allie will connect us by email. And then if you want some introductions of some people that might want to meet you over there to paint, Yosemite is a wonderful experience.
Yeah, I can't wait. Well, there's so many landscapes in the United States. I mean, I can't be wonderful to many places to go. Yeah,
and if you want to come, I don't know if we have stage slots in March or not. Allie would know that, but if we do, you're welcome to come in March. We're going to be in the Smoky Mountains in Tennessee, and if not, I think probably in the future. We haven't announced where we're going to be yet, but it'll be another mountainous area. So beautiful snow-capped mountains. Well,
do tell me. It'd be lovely to, maybe I can make some of these things. It'd be great.
Yeah, we'd love that. And let us know if you get any results from this exposure. I think there's a lot of people listening.
It'll be interesting. It's great you do this podcast on plein air painting. It's fantastic. I'm very excited.
We're excited about it too.
Yeah, it's great you say it's growing, which is so wonderful.
Yes.
I think it is going to grow a lot. Yes.
Well, we've been doing
Enjoying
it
a lot.
for many, many years now, so we've got a
Yes.
lot of episodes, 200 or 300 episodes.
Yeah. But I think you see it's the rebirth in kind of, now certainly during the lockdowns, people discovered landscape actually. And with that comes landscape painting.
Yes.
So many people, and many more people going out, enjoying the landscape, painting. It's great.
We did we during COVID and since COVID, we've done a 12 noon show on YouTube. We've had something like, I don't know, 15 million views or some such thing. It's insane. And we've taught a lot of people to paint. And so if you ever want to come on that show and do a lesson, we would happily have you there too.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Very kind of you.
Thanks, James.
Very thrilling. Okay.
All right. Bye-bye.
Keep in touch.
All right,
Cheerio.
Okay, now it's time for the Art Marketing Minute.
This is the Marketing Minute with Eric Rhodes, author of the #1 Amazon bestseller, Make More Money Selling Your Art, Proven Techniques to Turn Your Passion into Profit.
Hey, if you've got a question, a concern, a comment, we'd love to hear from you. Just email me, eric@artmarketing.com, or come live on the podcast. We'll record your questions. All right. This question comes from Mark Reynolds in Quincy, California. Mark says, I own a frame and gallery shop in Quincy. In 2024, I'll be organizing my 3rd Plein Air Festival. Congratulations on that, Mark. That's pretty cool. The first year, 23 artists attended. In 2023, there were 38 artists. In 2024, I'm expecting 60 artists. I advertised in 2 magazines, plus Facebook and Instagram, and I need to attract more art buyers to attend the reception and the street fair. What else can I do to attract out of area art buyers? The area is full of artists, but not very well known. Well, that's a big question, Mark. First, congratulations on doing that. I think it's really important to start plein air events. You know, there are now hundreds of plein air events around the world, and there were none when we started this magazine, or very few, maybe under 3 or 4. So it's really changed a lot, and people like you are important to us. And thank you. I know one of the advertising places you spent money on was Plein Air Magazine. Thank you. It's a good place to be if you're selling a plein air event. Many galleries have tried to avoid things like what you've done because they think it hurts their business. Because we had a gallery say to us, you know, I don't want to be a part of a plein air event because all these people are going to come to town. They're going to buy paintings at the plein air event, and they're not going to buy paintings from my artist and from my gallery. And I said, au contraire, they will, because they're here to see art. They love art. They go see paintings they want. They're going to wander into every gallery in town. They're going to buy paintings. And sure enough, that turns out to be true. So I applaud you, because a lot of galleries might have just rejected that whole idea. So that's really nice. People get this art buying dopamine high, and they like to buy art. And so when they come around for a plein air event, you know, especially if you're sponsoring it, you're going to sell art. You're going to have a big success. And I think we all need to approach things with an abundance mindset instead of, you know, a protective mindset. Now, you say you advertised in a couple of magazines that you need to attract more art buyers to attend. Well, let's take that question first. I think that the question is, how did you advertise in those magazines? I know you advertised in one of ours, Plein Air Magazine. I don't know if you advertised in Fine Art Connoisseur, which is where all the collectors are. And I think you advertised in one of the Western publications. All good decisions. But the things you've got to ask yourself is, did I have enough frequency? Frequency is the repetition of ads. And did I have an ad that really stood out, that got attention, that made people slap them in the face and made them pay attention and get their attention? I think everyone in the plein air world needs a dual strategy. And the dual strategy is a local strategy and a national strategy. Now, a national strategy would be something like Plein Air Magazine, right? Because you're reaching a national audience. And it's important for a lot of reasons. First off, it reaches art collectors who are specifically plein air collectors, and it reaches people who oftentimes travel to shows. especially if it's a regional thing. If it's a couple-hour drive, 3-hour drive, a weekend away, then it's cool. Say, hey, I'm going to drive up to your town, to Quincy, and experience this event. But the other reason it's important is because the key to a successful plein air event is the artists. And because the chatter from artists goes like this: hey, I went to this plein air event and they didn't have any good artists and they didn't sell any work. I'm not going back. So the other artists, when they get the opportunity to go, I'm going to skip that one. And to make yourself known. So what we typically say is you want at least 3, and one is a call for artists early on at the time you're getting ready to solicit artists to have them come in. And then the second one is about a month or 2 months before the event, and then the third one is right before the event. And then we recommend also that you get on our newsletters and things like that, so that it's a reminder. Hey, next weekend is this. Make sure you come to this. Make sure you schedule this, that kind of a thing. I think that's really important. But, you really need to reach local people, because anybody who's within let's say an hour or 2-hour driving distance is the most likely to come to your event. And so where do you reach people like that? Well, the first question is, are you a suburb of another area? Are you isolated in the middle of nowhere? I don't know the answer to that because I don't know where Quincy is. I should know. I'm sorry. But I think the idea here is there are lots of ways you can advertise locally, and there are local, websites, newspapers, magazines, tourism, books, things like that. We have up here in the Adirondacks, we have a very successful plein air festival. It's in its 20th year. And, they are everywhere. They have banners on the streets. They get the local community to put up banners. So it's talking to the tourists. They're in all the local magazines. There's stories in the newspaper. They're really working the PR angle. They are advertising. They have posters all over town. They do all those things. All of those things matter. Not one works independently. So you want to make sure that you're getting out and having a local strategy, but you also want to have that national prestige, because you need those, sometimes it's one collector who sees that ad who comes in and buys, 6 or 8 paintings. It spends $20,000. That's what you hope for. And so make sure that you're doing both of those things. I think that's important. The other thing, I like media partners. I like collaborations. Media partners would be, you go to the local city magazine in the surrounding area, or the local TV station, a local radio station. And you say, hey, I'm going to put your logo on the posters. You're going to have a presence. You can have a booth, a table, whatever. If you promote it, we're going to get you involved in it. You get the exclusive on the local story, those kinds of things. That stuff works really, really well. And that's how I would do it. And the other thing that's really important is who you have involved in your event. Most of the successful events in America, and there are lots of successful events, but the ones that are the biggest and most successful surround themselves with really, really smart local people who they get involved as volunteers at all kinds of different levels. And you want smart people who know lots of people, who can invite lots of people, smart people who know how to encourage people to buy, know how to run auctions, because you can't just assume they're going to buy. You need to nudge them a little bit. You need to help them along. You need to have somebody standing there by the booths and saying, hey, let me tell you about this painting. There's a lot of different things you can do that will really help this. And remember, the artist component is really, really important. There's a show, I won't mention names, but there was a show, it was really a big and prominent show. And they decided in their infinite wisdom that they were going to be a little bit more equal and sensitive to the needs of the local community. Makes sense, right? So they said, all right, we're going to make 50% of the artists local artists and 50% national artists. And so they did not jury in the local artists. They just put in the squeaky wheels, the ones who, always were asking. And as a result, they brought the overall quality of the show down because some of the artists that they let in were not very good. I happened to be at that show. I happened to be judging that show. It was almost an embarrassment. And the thing that happens is the good artists who come in say, wait a minute, I'm showing with other artists, they should all be good. It shouldn't be a bunch of good artists and a bunch of lesser developed artists. I mean, every one of us was a bad artist at one time. So I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that, but you've got to have good artwork. And so the key to that is to have an independent third-party juror who juries in. It's fine to have local people. It's fine if you want to have 50% local people, but make sure they're juried in and that you're not doing favors for somebody who you like them, but they're not a very good painter. And I know I'll get emails about this. I'm sorry. I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, but the reality is if you're trying to build a reputation for a show, you need to have good painters. So the good painters would not accept the invitations for this show when they were invited back. And the word got out that the show didn't sell well. And because people saw, I don't know, something about bad paintings brought things down, I suppose. And as a result, things changed pretty dramatically. And so what you want to do is focus on getting really, really good painters in there. Quality matters, local quality matters, national quality matters, but make sure that it's good because word spreads and artists don't want to come to shows where they're not going to make any money. Second question comes from Scott Pinot in Dalton, Pennsylvania. He said, I just read your book and I now have a clearer vision on how to handle social media and how advertising is a more effective tool. Each day I spend at least an hour working on some aspect of marketing planning. Bravo on that. And I'm working to launch my business in the fall of 24. I'm developing ways to make buying my art enjoyable as an experience for collectors. My question to you is, since I'm planning on selling directly to collectors, when I'm approached regarding my works, is there an easy way to vet the potential buyer early on to make sure I'm dealing with a legitimate collector without insulting them or coming across like I don't know what I'm doing? We hear a lot about fraudulent sellers. We hear a lot about fraudulent buyers. But to what degree should I be concerned about potential fraudulent buyers? Well, that's a loaded question, isn't it? I mean, we're all getting these emails that say, hey, it's I saw your work online. It's my wife's anniversary. I want to buy her something special. I like your paintings. I want to buy one of your paintings. Turns out to be a big scam. They send the painting, the check bounces, et cetera. Watch that. It's very, very tough. But I think that first off, why do you need to find out if they're legit buyers? If you're doing something quality, you can kind of tell if somebody's quality, but be careful about that. I was at a gallery in New York one day. I was sitting there waiting for a meeting. And this guy walks out of the gallery and the gallery owner says, hey, that guy just spent $500,000 in paintings. He said, when he first came in, I looked him up and down. He was wearing flip-flops, shorts, and a t-shirt. I thought, he can't afford anything. He doesn't belong here. Well, he just sold his company. His kids are out of college. He had plenty of money and he spent $500,000. So you can't judge people based on the way they look. You might want to have legitimate payment methods. You might want to have a credit card machine so that you can run it through the bank. If there's fraud, that's the bank's problem, not yours. I wouldn't, if you want to take checks, you can take checks, but there's certainly ways that you can call and check those checks or deposit those checks with your camera and your phone instantly to make sure they go through. So there's a lot of things you can do. You're going to have some risk, but I wouldn't worry about that too much. I think the thing that I worry about more is that if you try to categorize people, you might lose people because some people might be offended by some attempt to find out if they have the money. I wouldn't worry about that. I just don't worry about that kind of stuff at all. The majority of people who are going to buy something are going to be legit. And, once in a while you get burned. I got burned on something one time pretty badly. It stung, but I didn't stop doing everything. I was just a little more cautious. The other thing is I'm a little concerned about what you said is I'm only going to sell direct. Now, a lot of artists do that, and that's a really, really wonderful thing. But here's why I oftentimes say to people, be careful of what you wish for. Because, the typical artist argument is, well, I get to keep all the money. So now I have the responsibility of selling all the paintings. I get to keep all the money. I have to do all the advertising. I have to attract all the customers. I have to deal with the customer service of all the customers. I got to answer questions. I got to be on the phone. I got to be constantly reaching out to people. I got to constantly advertising. Man, it's exhausting. And yet, if someone good likes your work, like a gallerist, for instance, they are selling while you're sleeping. I mean, literally in some cases, because if you get a gallery in a different time zone and they're open while you're still in bed, if they're in New York and you're in California, they're open and they're selling paintings while you're sleeping. And you have a gallery in Alaska or, a Hawaii, there are a lot of different things, they're selling while you're sleeping, and they're selling for you. If you have 2 or 3 galleries, I don't like to have more than 2 or 3. I have 3 currently. I have an offer from a 4th I'm considering, but I don't know if I can produce enough quality for that. But some artists sell direct up to a certain size, and then anything over 8 by 10 or whatever, they'll sell through galleries. That's an option. But, you have a lot of work to do. And I like to leverage, if I can have 3 different people selling for me, if my sales skill isn't very good, then, if I screw up, I don't eat. If I've got 3 galleries and one of the 3 is good, at least I eat something. If 2 of the 3 are good, I might sell a little bit more. All 3 are selling stuff. I'm golden. Now, I don't ever like to turn 100% of anything over to somebody else. I want to make sure you remain in control. I talk about that in my book a little bit. You probably saw that. But, you could try a couple of things. First off, direct marketing, and that's what you're doing when you're selling direct. It's a whole different game. You have to build email lists. You have to do a lot of different things differently, and you got to stay in touch with people. And there's a limit to how much ask you can make. So you got to look for different ways to get your work in front of different people, get it seen, and get it seen by people that you don't know exist, because the ultimate buyer is somebody you don't even know. So I like the idea of multiplying yourself, and I hope you consider it. Talking about selling direct, I think it's okay, but you got to be really good at this. And I don't know, I'm pretty good at it, but I'm not selling any of my work direct. So just a thought. Anyway, that's the Marketing Minute, and I hope it's been helpful.
This has been the Marketing Minute with Eric Rhodes. You can learn more at artmarketing.com.
Check out Fall Color Week. Make sure to check it out. Even though it's sold out, get on the waiting list at fallcolorweek.com. Same thing with Fine Art Trip. It's not sold out, but it's going to be. And that's at finearttrip.com. We've got pleinairjapan.com. We think we can get a couple more seats in there, pleinairjapan.com. And of course, Realism Live is coming up, and you really should go to that. We're going to have some plein air painting in there, some landscape painting, some figures, some portraits, some still life, some incredible people. Burton Silverman, the only one I'm mentioning right now, but there's many, many, many more, about 30 of them. So check that out. I also have a blog on Sundays. It's called Sunday Coffee. You can find it at coffeewitheric.com. And it comes out every week. And sometimes I talk about art, not very often. It's just kind of about life. Also, if you don't know this, I have a show daily on YouTube, weekdays at 12 noon Eastern. It's called Art School Live, where we teach art. We have different people teaching every day, and you can learn or you can get better for free. Now, if you want in-depth, really high quality, professionally produced stuff, we have a whole website called painttube.tv. The world's leading masters, really in-depth, many, many hours, high definition quality, big close-up zooms. But if you want to learn, just go to Art School Live Daily too. I'm Eric Rhodes, and I'm the publisher of Plein Air Magazine, Fine Art Connoisseur Magazine, and other stuff. And thank you for watching today. Remember, it's a big world out there. Go paint it. Bye-bye.
This has been the Plein Air Podcast with Plein Air Magazine's Eric Rhodes. You can help spread the word about plein air painting by sharing this podcast with your friends. And you can leave a review or subscribe on iTunes so it comes to you every week. And you can even reach Eric by email, eric@pleinairmagazine.com. Be sure to pick up our free ebook, 240 plein air painting tips by some of America's top painters. It's free at pleinairtips.com. Tune in next week for more great interviews. Thanks for listening.